And welcome back to an episode of the Cooley Jets podcast. We host Ben Blessington and Michael Nania. Michael, it is finally game week. I could not be more excited for this Sunday. I know the Jets aren't the favorites in this one, but there's certainly a lot of optimism heading into the season. And even for week one, there's always the week one jitters and excitement, but I really do feel good about the team this year, even if this matchup isn't necessarily great to start off the year. You're coming up. It's the first time we'll see a game together in person. So a lot to look forward to this Sunday. We will be talking about like an in-depth preview about the Ravens and Jets game on Friday. This week will be a little different. We'll talk a little bit about the game. We'll talk briefly about the 53-man roster cuts, but this episode will be about our predictions for the season as a whole. So on Friday will be our in-depth Ravens preview. But I will say, start of the week, Michael, how are you feeling? Are you excited? I mean, I know you're excited, but how excited? If we had to rank them between every year we've done this podcast, we started it August of 2019. They haven't had a single win in September since we've been doing this podcast. But 2019, 2020, last year against the Panthers, this year, where does this stack up?
Oh yeah, I mean, this is, and not to underrate how excited we've been for other seasons, because look, we're always pretty excited, but there is something a little bit different this year. Like you mentioned, I'm going to be coming up to New York to see the game with you, so that's going to be pretty awesome. Then just outside of that, just the excitement with this team, how much legitimate talent it feels like to have on both sides of the ball, just veteran talent and young talent. There's a lot of energy, so I'm amped up for this game, and regardless of what the outcome is, because this is a tough team they're playing. Regardless of that, it just feels like that we're gonna see the Jets really show that they can compete this year. I really do believe that we're going to see them, and I feel like we say that every year, but I think this will finally be the season where we're like, okay, the Jets are an NFL team again, and then from there, hopefully, you can build and build as the years go on. But this should be the start of all that, so I'm very excited.
Yeah, I think they'll get a win in September this time around. What do you think? I mean, not to get into the season predictions too early, but you think we'll get a September win against the AFC North?
I think they will. And I know that's what our bar is for this team. Just win a game in September. But I think, you look at weeks 2 and 4, playing the Deshaun Watson-less Browns and then the Mitch Trubisky Steelers. I think between those two, you got to get at least one. And then the two tougher teams, you get both of them at home. So I think between those 4 games, they should be able to get one, but we'll see.
Yeah, to keep this podcast timely, there's 2 pieces of news that came out. We'll start with the first one, which I don't know if it's news. I don't know if it's just coach speak, but Robert Saleh kind of floating out the possibility that Zach Wilson could play. We'll have a firm answer Wednesday. This podcast will come out Tuesday. So there's at least a day of speculation. Do you think he's just putting that possibility out there to just keep the Ravens guessing just a little bit? It seems like Flacco will be the starter, but if you do listen to the press conference, it does kind of sound like Saleh's view of this is just like, Zach's going to have to go out there either this Monday or this week or next week and start playing. He's going to have to go into the fire one of these weeks. It's not like he can have a super long ramp up period. So it does seem like if his knee's stable and he's feeling good, like you could just throw him in week 1. What do you think? Is there a chance we see him on Sunday, or do you think this is just Saleh trying to throw the Ravens off the trail?
I mean, I feel like there might be a little bit of a chance. And I think what kind of changes the team's perception of whether or not to play him versus us is just the amount of information that they have. Because from our perspective, I think it's very easy to say, play it safe, just take your time with it and all that. But, they have a much closer, they've been more closely monitoring, how he's recovering, how he's been working out, staying conditioned, and just how it's all going. So if he truly is 100% with no pain, no limitations, and they feel like he's ready to go, then, why not throw him out there? It's hard for us to say, even though we'd like to play it on the cautious side. But, if there is any sort of, concern, if he's not 100% back, then I think they'll play it safe and wait at least one more week. And I think that is what's going to happen. It's
Right.
Probably, like you were saying, just leave that possibility open to keep the other team guessing a little bit, to kind of throw off their game planning. Probably more so that. Especially with the fact that Joe Flacco has kind of been, mentally preparing to be the starter for a few weeks, and physically, just in terms of taking the first team reps. So I still think it's going to be Flacco, but I do think there is a small possibility that maybe he just is further along than we as outsiders might think he is.
Yeah, Saleh said that, the offense doesn't change much when you have Flacco or Wilson in, but I guess the offense itself doesn't, but just the improvisation and the mobility at the quarterback position inherently changes how you might play them. We'll get more into that on Friday's podcast, talking about the schemes and if it's Flacco or if it's Wilson. I will know by then, but I think if look, I mean, he was on a cart. What was it, 10 days ago, watching practice? I get they didn't want him to stand on the leg for too long. Maybe they were being cautious. He had that sleeve on it. It looked like he's been walking gingerly. I mean, it does sound like from what the beat reporters, like you said, the amount of information we have, the limited times the beat reporters have seen him, it does seem like he's progressed well. I think the last report we had was that I'm trying to remember which day it was, if it was practice or something, that he was moving around, didn't look like he was limping. So it's possible that his knee feels completely fine. And if his knee feels completely fine, if he's passing all the stability tests, if the doctor says he's 100%, there is an argument to be made saying, we'll throw him out there this week. And I think if, as you said, we don't have all the information, but I think from reading Robert Saleh's tone, unless he's just a great actor, it does kind of sound like if this was a playoff game, he might play this Sunday. But, what's the harm in, giving his knee another week to get back into shape? It's like, we don't know how long he's been running for, how long he's been throwing for. Like, why not give his body and his mind one other extra week? You have Joe Flacco going up against his former team. I don't know. It kind of just seems like, it's a season opener at home. It just seems like maybe week 2. I know it'll be against Myles Garrett, but you can't, pick and choose like that. This is your starting quarterback. I think week 2 on the road against Jacoby Brissett, giving him an extra week is probably the smart play. And if you're a betting man, you're definitely betting on that. But we'll find out on Wednesday if it is possible. I think there's maybe a slight chance. I don't think Saleh would just flat out lie. I mean, but I think he probably knows, and I think everybody kind of knows that this will be Joe Flacco this Sunday. Anything else you want to add on that before we move to some of the 53-man cuts?
I think I mostly agree with you that, playing it on the cautious side is the right way to do it, just because it's one game out of 17. And if it, helps him helps to decrease his chances of re-injuring and just being able to play up to his full capability, then
right.
By all means, just go ahead and sit him out one more week. That's the benefit of having Joe Flacco, is that, you can sit him and feel like, all right, we can win, still compete and potentially win this meaningful game to start the season. So yeah, I do lean on the side of caution, but I think there still probably is a real chance that, maybe he just is doing better than, both the initial prognosis kind of suggested and, just the timetable and all that. So it will be interesting to see. I would say it's 90% Flacco, maybe 10% Wilson.
I think that's probably a good estimate. And, do you think this is that crazy of me to just say maybe this is just based off because it's Flacco facing his former team? But, I'm not. My excitement level for week 1 doesn't change that much whether or not Zach or Joe Flacco is playing. Is that crazy? I mean, I think it would for all the other games, but week 1, Flacco going up against his former team, I feel like he is that calming veteran presence. He obviously, it's a different defense. They changed defensive coordinators, but it's the same principles of the Ravens defense. I just feel like, I feel like Flacco still gives the Jets a very good chance to win this game. And you could maybe even argue that in this specific game might give the Jets a better chance. Do you think that's crazy to say, or or are we on the right track?
I mean, I agree with you, and we have had a few weeks kind of rationalize it, but no, I think it is a fair thing to say, just because of this specific team, and not only because of the revenge storyline, which is fun. Yeah. It definitely adds to it.
How could they replace Joe Flacco with Lamar Jackson like that? I mean,
of course, yeah. Like that's all that matters in this game is the revenge storyline. But no, that's definitely fun. But in addition to that, I just think, from a pure matchup standpoint, I think you look at a defense like this, a lot of man coverage, exotic blitzes, stuff like that. And you'd like Zach Wilson to, at some point, prove that he can handle these things. But right now, in this moment, we don't really know that yet. Whereas Joe Flacco, you kind of believe that he can do a decent enough job to protect the ball, make the throws he needs to make to at least keep you in this game. You do feel a little more confident in him against that type of defense until Zach Wilson proves that, yeah, he's here, he's arrived, he can play these type of teams and compete. So yeah, I do agree that I think
right.
the excitement level is similar because you believe in Flacco's ability against this particular team.
Yeah. Yeah. And last thing, this will be something we talk about either Friday or the next week. I think some of the pressure that's going to be on Zach Wilson in his first game back, there should be the qualifier that I don't think the first week we get of Zach Wilson will be the best week, obviously. Like, I think he's just a guy who's going to keep getting better with all the reps that he gets. I mean, you listened to Brett Favre talk about that a few weeks ago, where it's just like, this is just a quarterback that needs reps. He needs in-game experience because he has all the talent in the world. So I think that's important to keep in mind if he plays this Sunday or next week. Like, this is a quarterback that is going to get better throughout the season, in my opinion. All right, let's talk briefly about some of the 53-man cuts. It happened a few days ago. I guess the last little round of it was today, so I guess it's somewhat relevant. Kind of a strange roster move. Zonovan Knight makes the initial roster. The Jets have 4 running backs. They only have 3 offensive tackles. And then today, they cut Zonovan Knight, hoping to sneak him onto the practice squad, because I believe they still had 1 spot left. And I could be wrong about that, but if I remember, they only had 15 signed. You can fact check me on that. And then bring back Connor McDermott, who they released, who is, I mean, Jets X Factor has been just railing against Connor McDermott since the beginning of time. He might be the worst offensive tackle in all of football. He's terrible. He was getting outplayed by not only Max Mitchell, who seems like coaching staff is fairly high on, but Chuma Edoga, who got cut and got claimed. And he missed all of camp after that. Like, he played 2 weeks, got outplayed, got injured. I think it was the green and white scrimmage he got injured, and hasn't played since then. So it's kind of strange that I'm not going to lose sleep over cutting Zonovan Knight, especially assuming that he goes to the practice squad to bring back McDermott, who hopefully won't have to play. But it's just like, what is this weird attachment to Connor McDermott? Can you explain it? Can you rationalize it?
No, I can't. I definitely can't.
It's okay, good. Next topic.
Yeah, next topic. All right. No, for real. I mean, like, it's one of the hardest things to explain on this roster. And Joe Douglas has done, I think, a nice job. Hopefully the wins come at some point, but most of the moves you see where he's coming from. They make
especially
sense,
the last 2 years.
Yeah, the last 2 years specifically. But there are some moves where it feels like they have sort of this like sort of attachment to particular players that is more where they like this player more than it seems like is justified based on the production. You know, Nathan Shepard is one of them who they didn't acquire, but still strangely have an attachment to. But guys like him, and then Connor McDermott is a big one where it's just, why do you guys like this player so much? Ashton Davis sticking around, like, why do you guys like these players so much? It does seem like they do have sort of that tendency to get attached to guys. So I don't know what it is with McDermott. His production is terrible. Every single time he plays, he's pretty bad, and you notice the drop off. Maybe they think he's tight end upside based on that Jaguars touchdown catch. No, he definitely doesn't. But it's a hard one.
He's
really
one of those. I think he's just one of those guys who is very toolsy, like has a lot of maybe appealing traits because he's big and seemingly athletic, and he's long. That's, if you look at he does have insane length. But yeah, I can't think of many when you go and watch the Jets, like all 22 on NFL game, or it's like NFL Plus now, and you watch the offensive line angle. I mean, the amount of time I have probably like 10 different plays in my head of Connor McDermott, just off the top of my head, just getting beat like a drum in every single game he's been in. I can't think of many positive plays outside of that touchdown against Jacksonville. Kind of circling back to what you said about Zach Wilson and the information we have, some of that attachment is probably the, I don't know how to quantify it, maybe the 10% of the data that we do, probably more, honestly. They see these guys every single day in the weight room, in the film room. They know these guys' character. It's part of the reason it's hard to criticize certain cuts, because these guys have, the coaches and the GM have a lot more information about these guys. But as you said, the production from McDermott has been terrible. And it is strange that, okay, they cut both Edoga and McDermott. Edoga gets claimed, and then they bring McDermott back. I don't know why they chose to do it now. I don't know if there's any type of roster manipulation with McDermott being injured and having to release him, but the timing of it's all strange. The cool thing was how many players the Jets had claimed. I mean, 7 on the Wednesday after cutdown day and 11 total on active rosters. I mean, that's just, a tribute to Joe Douglas and what he's been able to do to build out the depth of this roster. The Jets just have so many, young, promising potential depth pieces. What will make this team a good or even a great team is if there's guys like, Elijah Moore, Carl Lawson, Quinn, and those guys, can they be stars? But there's no questioning the depth, and specifically the young depth on this team. And the league recognized that. So that's cool. But it is strange. It's like Edoga outplayed him. If you were going to keep 4 offensive tackles, why didn't you just keep Edoga and let McDermott walk? And clearly they have an attachment to McDermott. The one with Ashton Davis, though, I will say, I've tried to rationalize it in my head. You let me know if I'm on the right. Here's what I think, because they did mention 2 things with Ashton Davis: special teams and character. I can't speak to character. I can speak to the angles on run plays that he has, but Special teams value, I guess they see, look, third round pick. If you draft a great special teamer in the third round, that's not a terrible pick. I mean, the hit rate in the third round is higher than day 3, but it's still not amazing. And Ashton Davis, college hurdler, great athlete. I mean, he doesn't take great angles, so that might not, factor into special teams, but he seems like maybe a guy who could be a great special teamer. It seems like Tony Adams, who we didn't really talk about that much at all. I think in the last week's episode, we said that's a guy that'll definitely end up in the practice squad because he's had a few flash plays in preseason. Joe Blewett, I know, did a more of an in-depth breakdown on him and really showed how he did play extremely well throughout the preseason. But it seems like they said, we're going to take Tony Adams over Jason Pinnock as the guy we think, can play. I think they wanted Pinnock in the practice squad, but if they had to choose one, Adams seemingly can play slot corner if Michael Carter goes down, gives him more versatility as a corner and a free safety. And so they chose him over Pinnock, and then Davis is the special teamer. If one of the starting safeties goes down, I think Will Parks, who they figured would make it to the practice squad, is the guy that'll get called up and might get reps even over Ashton Davis, who made the 53-man roster. Do you think that that's right? I kind of feel like it was very clear Parks outplayed Davis at safety, but maybe you put Davis in the active roster for special teams, and if there's an injury at safety, you can bring up Parks. Do you think that's right, or do you think that they're just wanting to give Ashton Davis, the bump over Will Parks because he was a draft pick?
Well, I think that definitely has to be part of it. Although I think Douglas did kind of prove this offseason with the cuts, last week that he is he's willing to part ways with some of his draft picks. He definitely proved that with, Zuniga, Marshall, Hamza. He showed that he will make those cuts if he has to. He's not overly attached to every draft pick, but I do think it maybe partially with Davis, especially because of how the 2020 class is panning out. Maybe they're just holding on to it a little bit. But I think your justification makes sense. We know they value special teams with these bottom of the roster guys. Like we've heard it with Mims and other fringe roster players. Like you got to be able to contribute there to really make the roster as a bottom of the depth chart guy. But which I like. I'm a big special teams guy. I think it's cool that they really value it. So yeah, I think you look at Davis and the athletic traits that he has, it definitely makes sense that it's that they see a guy who they could mold into a good special teamer. Maybe if he gets the chance to, focus on that specifically, since the safety thing hasn't really panned out too well. But I think Tony Adams is interesting, and anyone who's watched Joe Blewett's film review at Jets X Factor knows, and if you haven't, you should check it out. His film in the preseason, I didn't even really notice it going through the first go round because
which is a good thing for really safety.
Subtle, which is a great thing for safety, and that's the whole point, is that he wasn't really popping out because he was doing his job so well, kind of in a Sauce Gardner sort of way with his coverage. And then he did also make some nice tackles, just as that didn't really pop out because they weren't tackles for loss or anything like that, but just like nice last line defense
right
tackles, filling in and run support or chasing a play down to the sideline. So
he had a couple of big hits too, right?
Yeah, he did. Like a couple of times he found the ball. His finish was really strong. So his preseason film was quietly really good, and I think he did outplay pretty much. He's probably the best safety on the team. So I think it was deserved based on his play that he made the team. So I can see the justification with these two keeps. The Davis is still a little surprising, but I think your thought process is on the right track.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the valuation of special teams is something that fans don't ever really care about, but it does make sense. Like, it's hard to be a good team if you're giving up 15-yard punt returns. Right. Field position obviously matters. I'd like to see Braden Mann get a little bit better at pinning teams back inside their own 10. It seems like every single time he just boots it straight into the end zone or he hits it at like the 19-yard line. So, if you're going to value special teams, hopefully the punter you drafted can hold up his end of it. But having guys like Hardy, bringing back a guy like Marshall Harris, who played a lot of special teams in San Francisco, Ashton Davis, like, it does make you a better team. And it does kind of speak to that, the spot the Jets are in, where they have all this young, exciting talent that they're trying to develop. And then these veteran leaders who are on Super Bowl teams and playoff teams, and maybe guys like Vinny Curry, who's a little older, making the team over, or maybe a guy like Jabari Zuniga, because it's like, we want to have the best team available and not just, the youngest team full of the players, the most potential. Last one, before we get to, looking at the season as a whole, keeping Ty Johnson. Well, initially it was Ty Johnson and Zonovan Knight over Tevin Coleman. And then with today's move with McDermott, It's Ty Johnson over Coleman / Knight. I get the sense you don't like it just looking at your face. um, can you rationalize that one at all? What does Ty Johnson bring to the table that Tevin Coleman didn't, / even a guy like Zonovan Knight? I think, well, I'll let you go first. What does Ty Johnson bring to the table? How do you rationalize that move?
Well, this one is definitely another puzzling one. Although I think with Johnson, you could sort of see some of the traits that are appealing about him. I think we saw it last year. I think his natural talent is pretty good. He does have nice speed. His power is pretty good when, at the contact point, he can put his head down and get a few extra yards. I think he's a good outside zone running back because of his ability to just, I think he hits top gear pretty quickly, so he can, string it out horizontally, one cut upfield, and he gets top speed pretty good. So he does have some talent, but it's just his fundamentals have got to be maybe the worst in the league for a running back. Just the drops, really bad pass blocking, doesn't give you much of anything as a route runner. I think he's had some fumbles in his career too. So just all those things are really not there with him. And I feel like that's what you would kind of want in your third running back, because, they have two really talented guys at the top of this depth chart. And Tevin Coleman as that third guy, I think gives you, the veteran experience. He's got size, good pass blocker, can run some routes, they're pass catching. So he can do some of those things that can sort of fill in the gaps of your running back room and just give you a high floor when he comes in. But, now you lose one or two running backs and Ty Johnson's in there, and you get what you got in the Saints game last year when he's dropping 3 passes in a row. So I don't know. This one didn't make a ton of sense. Obviously, Knight gives you more upside, him being younger. So I understood keeping him, but now Johnson over Knight, with the McDermott move, it's a little puzzling. So this one doesn't make a ton of sense to me, but I do see the talent that he has, but I just don't think that's the right thing to value with this third running back spot.
Yeah, I guess the only thing with Johnson is out of him, Knight, and Coleman, he does seem like the biggest, more like out of all of them, he's kind of the back that you could replace Breece Hall with if Breece Hall went down with an injury. Like in November, when you need a bigger body back who can handle more of a workload. Whereas Tevin Coleman's a good third down back, brings the speed, the pass catching ability. I think Knight has a nice blend of the two, but he is still a smaller back. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, that's one of those where the coaches have more information than we do. I do think that Ty Johnson is underrated in some respects. Like you said, like his natural talent is actually pretty solid. He's had plenty of good to solid plays in the Jet uniform, but he's also had too many maybe bad plays that you'd like to see from a running back to be like, this guy should make it over a more proven player in Tevin Coleman or a more exciting young player in Zonovan Knight. But outside of that, I feel like all the cuts were fairly what we expected. No Denzel Mims trade. The practice squad rounded up pretty well. I mean, with today's changes to the practice squad, those guys will play. Those guys will come up. So I think they did a nice job rounding out the roster. And as I said, with all the claims that the Jets got, they didn't have any themselves, but other teams stealing their players, you have to feel good about the back end of this roster for sure. All right, let's look towards the season as a whole. As I said, Friday, we'll go deeper into the Ravens game, talk about the schemes, players to look out for, predictions for that game, etc. Before we get into, we have a list of like superlatives, like, record prediction, offensive MVP, stuff like that. And then we have some over-unders, like statistical stuff. Before we get into that, Michael, though, training camp is over. Preseason is over. It's the first, game week of the season. What can you take away from this Jets team from training camp? Like for me, one of the minor things, obviously there's some big things, but one of the minor things I did notice is I think this is a team that hits hard. And I guess the reason that's important is when I watched this Jets defense last year, they felt soft. Too many times they felt soft. Too many times it felt like they were getting bullied in the trenches. And that just can't happen with the style of play that they have. And maybe it's just preseason. Maybe it's like Quincy Williams hit on Jalen Hurts and Quan Alexander's hit against the Giants. And there's a few other ones, like Will Parks had a few, are skewing this. But it seemed like the Jets, for the limited amount of tackling they've been able to do, and granted, we haven't seen the starters for a full 4 quarters, so we don't know if this is true for, all units on the team. But it seems like, tackling's in a good shape. They hit hard. It seems like the energy level is extremely high from just what we've been able to see in the summer. I mean, what are some of the takeaways now that we've seen them in pads in some game situations before we get into the real stuff? Anything you learned about this team that maybe you didn't know a month ago?
Well, I do agree with you on the hard hitting. I think that's definitely something that was pretty consistent, and it's definitely something that you need to see from them if they're going to be successful, because playing the way they want to play, like they're so fast, so aggressive, so downhill, that this is supposed to be the reward of doing all that, is
Right.
hitting hard, making big plays in the backfield. So if you're not doing that, then what's the benefit of playing that way when the cost of that is, maybe a few more misplayed, routes to the football, or overplayed gaps and things like that. So this is supposed to be the reward of playing like that. And I think in the preseason, we saw a lot of that. So that was good. And in addition to that, I think the tackling collectively, just the consistency was pretty good. It didn't feel like they were missing a lot of tackles, and that was backed up by the numbers as well. Their missed tackle numbers were pretty low, some of the lowest in the league. So that's really good to see as a team wide thing, because it kind of shows that the preparation from practice is carrying over to the games, because obviously that's a tough thing at the beginning of the season and in the preseason, is the tackling, getting used to that again after not doing it for so long. So that's good to see, both the hard hitting and the consistency of the tackling, which Tony Adams was a big part of, who we were just talking about. I think he impressed in those areas. So yeah, I think the collective tackling was pretty good. In addition to that, one thing I did like is, especially in the third game against the Giants, on both sides of the ball, is you could really see the identity of this team, even offensively. I know the results weren't there in that game. Starting offense only scored, I believe, 3 points. They turned over twice. So, you look at it that way, then, the results aren't great. But watching them on a play-to-play basis, the offense, like, you could see what they wanted to be,
Right.
spreading the football around, 2 tight ends, play action, quick passing, routes over the middle. The run game, the outside zone, I feel like it was even more outside zone heavy than last year. So you can really see the identity. And we know what the defense did. They were dominant, fast to the football, hitting hard, like you said. So I think on both sides of the ball, you could really, more so than I think any Jets team in recent memory, you could see, like, okay, I know how this team wants to play, how they want to win games,
Right.
and what their strength is. So
Definitely.
that was really cool to see on both sides.
Yeah, it would have been extremely hard to describe what the Jets' offensive game plan was under like Todd Bowles or even
Yeah,
Adam
like,
Gase.
what was the 2018 team? What was Jeremy Bates's offense?
It
What
was a
that?
branch of what they're trying to do now. Like, it was a West Coast run first type of offense. I think for me, the thing that, and we knew this before last month, but the importance of the tight end position in this offense is, you can't overstate it. And not to circle back, but there was one guy we forgot to mention, like surprising cut. That was Cager over Wesco, which was a bit surprising, because now it's like, with no Nick Bowden, no Trayvon Wesco, does that mean Jeremy Ruckert's getting your fullback reps? I guess it does signal to the thing, to the point that they like what they see from Cager. They like the potential mismatch that they're going to have with him as he continues to develop. I would expect him probably to be inactive on game days to start out the year, but he's a guy to keep an eye out for. But the importance of tight end in this offense, it's going to be everything, especially if they don't have a fullback. I know Rucker might get some of those reps, and they might, put Conklin in there and have him motion out or whatever. But it's going to be a lot of 12 personnel for this team, and they'll mix in their 10 personnel like they did last year. Towards the end of the year, I think you saw some success when Zach has the field spread out like that. I think it can be easier for him at times. We didn't get to see too much of Zach, the offense with Zach at the helm. I mean, we still know what the offense will look like, but I am curious to see, maybe after the injury, we won't get too much of this, but him running, like, going into the year, I was anticipating to see a lot more of Zach Wilson on the move. Maybe not after this knee injury, but I think that is something that doesn't get talked about enough, is his athletic ability. So yeah, like you said, I think we know what this team is trying to do. We'll probably touch on a lot of what we, go in depth on that over these next few questions, but let's just start it off with the main question, which is the win total, which is impossible to predict. It's much harder to predict it back in May when the schedule comes out, but I feel like after we've had a bit of time to see them on the field, you kind of have a sense of what this team will be. There's so many variables with how young this team is. But Michael, what do you think the Jets finish? And not only record-wise, but within the AFC East itself, which every team outside of the Bills and the Dolphins have both gotten better. The Patriots have gotten worse. Do the Jets move up in the pecking order, or do you think they stay in the basement?
I'm right now, I kind of, alternate based on the day, how optimistic I'm feeling on that particular day. But I think the number that I'm settling in with is, I think 8 wins is my feeling right now.
So 8-9.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with 8-9. I think that'll be third in the division. I think New England's gonna. You never want to say this because they always, exceed your expectations, just like they did last year. But I just don't like that New England roster. It feels like they got worse this offseason. So I think the Pats will be in last place, Jets third, Dolphins second, Bills first. Do you agree with that?
I think the Pats will be worse. I don't think the Pats will make the playoffs. I think the Pats will be around 8 or 9 wins. I think the Bills will obviously win the division. I almost want to be like the Jets, Pats, and Dolphins will all kind of be around the same. Here's my thinking. First, I do think the Pats will get worse. When you look at that roster, it's pretty barren. I do think they'll be better than some people are trying to act, though. You can never count out Belichick. I think Mac Jones is a solid quarterback and exactly what they need. They still have a great O-line coach, I should say. Like, as the season goes on, that'll be a team that'll get better and will win games in November, December. They might start off the year kind of rough, but I think when it's all said and done, they'll win 8, 9, 7 games, something around there. The Dolphins, you kind of want to say the same thing, although I will say this. Dolphins fans are acting like they've just won the Super Bowl with the offseason they've had. And I don't know if that you can necessarily say that. Their defense last year was great, but it's an aging defense. And it's a defense that was orchestrated by the head coach you just fired. And granted, they kept the defensive coordinator, so the system won't change that much. But that Dolphins defense is talented, but I don't think it's otherworldly when you look at it, especially the ages of the players. And look, I know Dolphins fans don't give a shit about my opinion on the team, but this is just my perspective from what I've seen from Dolphins Twitter and the amount of shit they've been talking. Then you go to the offense side of the ball. I like McDaniel. I think he's funny. I think he's self-deprecating. I do believe that type of coach could succeed as a head coach. Right off the bat, though, and we've seen it with not just Michael LaFleur as the Jets offensive coordinator, but go to Kyle Shanahan, where he's been. This offensive system takes a lot to install. You really isn't operating full efficiency to start the year or in year one. Towards the end of the year, I think that offense really starts to get going. But it's a complicated offense, and I don't really believe in Tua. I don't believe they necessarily have the offensive line, and especially the tight ends to make that offense work. Mike Gesicki's a receiver, and you look at that tight end depth chart, it's like the Jets last year, and you see how much that affects it. And so Mike McDaniel is going to have to adjust. Now, Mike LaFleur, the Jets offensive coordinator, was the 49ers passing coordinator. And I think it was maybe more of a natural progression for him to say, let's go more 10 personnel. Let's spread it out for Zach. Not that the Dolphins can't do that. Not that Mike McDaniel doesn't know how to do that, but he's the run game coordinator. And in San Francisco, that running attack was built around Kyle Juszczyk and George Kittle. And they do not have that in Miami. So not to get off on a whole tangent, but I don't know. I'm not necessarily buying the Dolphins hype. Tyreek Hill's great.
I agree with you.
I don't know.
Yeah,
but to get
I respect quickly on the Dolphins. I mean, I respect their top end talent. That's what they have that I think the Jets are lacking and need to get to really get to that next level.
I don't know if the Jets are lacking it. I just think it's not as proven, maybe. But
not lacking.
Tyreek Hill. The Dolphins have Tyreek
hasn't been proven yet, like you said. But like Tyreek Hill, Teron Armstead, with Jalen Waddle could be.
Armstead's hurt a lot. Is Waddle that much more impressive than Elijah Moore last year?
Okay, I'm not being pro Dolphins here. Like I'm just trying to.
I'm in my bag right now.
Preface it by saying I'm not saying it's a terrible team, but I agree with all the concerns you laid out. I think this is a team that's pretty firmly in that 7 to 9 range.
Right. So here's my prediction. You want to hear a bold one? Okay. Dolphins 7 wins, Patriots 8 wins, Jets 9 wins. Am I crazy? Am I drinking the Kool-Aid?
Okay.
I'm saying Jets go 9-8. Why not? Why not?
I think all these teams are kind of in the same tier, like you said. The Bills are up there. They're an elite team. But other 3 teams, I think it's fair to kind of put them in the same group.
Look, the optimistic predictions in this podcast can get watered down because we're a glass half full type of pod.
Yeah.
But this is a year when you look at this
team.
Despite the name, it's really, it's honestly being facetious. But no, I'm just kidding. You're the measured one. I'm not. I just think that when you look at this team and the processes they've had this offseason, I really do buy into Robert Saleh. I think they can win 9 games. There's no reason they can't. I'll put it that way. The toughest thing about this year will be the schedule to open it up. But it's like you mentioned, Jacoby Brissett Browns, that's a winnable game. Mitch Trubisky Steelers, that's a winnable game. I mean, that's 2 right off the bat. Then you have that, you play the Dolphins at home. I think that next few games where it's like the Packers, who are coming right off London, is tough. The Broncos in Denver is tough. But the Patriots is a winnable game. After the bye, you get all those games of like the Jaguars and the Seahawks and the Lions and the Bears. Like I think the Jets can get to that 9-win ballpark. Maybe that's a little high. Maybe they'll be more in the 7-8 category. But you know what? I'm putting my money where my mouth is this offseason. We've been so optimistic that I'm buying in way more. I'm more confident in this prediction than any other 2019, 2020, 2021, which isn't saying much. But all those years I wasn't saying, I think I predicted like 8 wins, 7 wins, and then 7 wins last year. So this is a little higher either way. I'm going 9 wins. So we'll see if I'm crazy. Offensive MVP, Michael. We did an offensive MVP and a defensive MVP to split it up. We'll ignore team MVP for now. It seems like Elijah Moore should be the favorite here. Do you think that's where we're going here?
Yeah, I think he gets my vote, but I guess if we had to bring up some different candidates, who else would you bring up?
Well, the running backs. I mean, it'd be hard to pick one, but I could see if Breece Hall is what we thought he was in college. Granted, we didn't necessarily see that in the preseason. I thought he had some nice runs. Doesn't mean he's going to be a bust. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it wasn't like he had a dominating preseason. He had some great plays, and it's not really indicative of who he is as a player, especially considering the blocking that he was playing behind. But it wasn't like I saw enough in the preseason to be like, wow, Breece Hall is going for 1,500 yards this season. So I think it'll be Elijah Moore, but Hall's a contender. Tyler Conklin is a contender. I mean, I think those are Zach Wilson, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like those are maybe the favorites ahead of like the Garrett Wilsons and the Berrioses and Davis and Michael Carter.
Yeah, I agree on Conklin. I could see him being a contender for this. Not in the sense that he has any chance to be their best statistical producer, but if you combine that with if he can have a really good blocking season, then I could see, putting those two things together and being like, he's kind of the most valuable player in his importance to the offense running the way it's supposed to be run. I could see that case being made if he has a, peak ceiling to the best of his potential, but I think it's going to be Elijah Moore. I'm very confident in what he's going to do.
I agree. I think it'll be Elijah Moore. I don't think we need much more rationalization there. Defensively, this one's a little more interesting. There's a lot. I think there's more contenders here. Going through some of the obvious ones, Carl Lawson is in this comeback year. If he's the pass rusher that we think he is, he could be in for a 10-plus sack season, and that could easily make him the MVP. Quinnen Williams, there's been a ton of buzz this offseason about the shape he's in and the productions he's had in training camp. Robert Saleh can't keep, praising him enough. He's definitely in contention here. Got the rookie Sauce Gardner. There's been a lot of buzz about Jordan Whitehead, JFM, Mosley. I mean, who are you feeling for this one?
Yeah, definitely a lot more contenders for this one. I think, when I was just running through it in my head right now, kind of considering the options, the thing that stood out the most to me was who's going to help in both phases. And when I think about it that way, I think Quinnen Williams is the guy who stands out to me. I think he more so than anyone else has the ability to affect both the run and the pass on this defense. So I think if he plays up to his ceiling, he has the best two-way potential of anyone on this defense. So I think he is going to play up to his ceiling. I think with the edge help that the Jets have now, he's going to get a lot more room to work with just naturally with those guys winning out there. He's going to have more space. And then in the run game, he's going to have a lot on his plate to really carry this interior group. And I think he's going to be up to that. So I'm going to go with Quinnen Williams, but Carl Lawson is probably a close second for me.
I don't want to copy you, but I was feeling Quinnen as well before you said it. Yeah, I do think that Quinnen's going to be the defensive MVP this year. I think he's really primed to have that season we've been waiting for since he's come in here. Like you said, though, I mean, this defensive line, it really is in many ways one position. They all kind of operate as one unit. And the way Robert Saleh was talking about it today is just like you feel pretty confident that on third downs, at least one of them is going to win. And it's like if Quinnen Williams is having a dominated season, it's going to be hard to double team him if he still have to block Carl Lawson or JFM. I'm feeling that Quinnen Williams would be the MVP, but maybe, you'd expect a guy like Carl Lawson to have more sacks and some other guys to benefit off of it. But I think at the heart of this Jets defensive line is going to be the interior pressure from Quinnen Williams. So I know we've agreed on both of them so far. But, I feel like those are two pretty good answers there. All right, rookie of the year. I know we're probably going to agree on this one as well. It's hard not to say Sauce based on what we saw in the preseason. The expectations are extremely high. Garrett Wilson, I'm extremely high on as well. But, what point does he really work himself into the offense? Will it be like last year where, Michael Carter started the year as like, I think the third down running back. And then week 2, he played a lot more against the Patriots and he had some nice plays. And then I think he started week 3. Like, so then it's like, is that the case with Garrett Wilson where it's like by week 3 or week 4, he's starting over Corey Davis? Or are we going to get to the point where it's like Davis is still playing well? He's a starter opposite Moore. Barrios is a starter in the slot, and Garrett Wilson is working his way in. So that's kind of preventing me from picking him. Plus, I'm more confident in the defense and the offense. It's like Jermaine Johnson is still maybe more of a developmental project. Hall is in there. I mean, Clemens is the fan favorite. Who is it? Sauce? Are we going to go 3 for 3 in these MVP predictions or superlative predictions?
I think we're gonna be off for the first time here. I'm gonna switch it up. I'm gonna go with Breece Hall here.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Explain.
I think Sauce will have a good rookie year, but I see Breece Hall having, rookie running backs. I think are in a better position to succeed than corners. True. I think that's
especially with Sauce's schedule.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's the basis of it. I think I think he's going to be a good starting corner, like maybe a top 25 to 20 sort of range, which is a great place to be as a rookie. Whereas Breece Hall, I think I see him sort of taking the share of the load within the first few weeks of the season. I think by the time October rolls around, it'll be probably 65% Hall in the backfield versus Carter. And I think from there, he's going to be efficient running the ball, catching the ball. And by the end of the year, he's going to put up numbers to where it's hard to deny him as the rookie of the year. But going forward, I think Sauce will be the best player in this class and the most impactful considering position. But rookie of the year, I think Hall is going to have a great season to where you can't really deny that it's him. Whereas Gardner will have some ups and downs with just being a rookie corner against a tough schedule.
You make a convincing pitch. I'm not going to change the answer because I'd rather not go 3 for 3 in these predictions. But yeah, I think it probably will be easier for Breece Hall to have the better production. That's for sure. The Becton injury is such a bummer because with Becton on this offensive line, I really thought that it was hard to get a sense of the run blocking in the preseason. They haven't had as much time to work together. They really haven't had any time as a unit to really work together. The blocking was a bit spotty, but we haven't seen the starting 5 that much. But with Becton, you just knew that at the very least, that guy can get you a few yards if you run behind him.
Yeah, for sure. I have to say, though, Dwayne Brown looked pretty good.
Dwayne Brown definitely looked good, but it's like, how does Fant play at right tackle?
Right.
How does AV2 look at right guard? Is McGovern still a bum? I mean, like, there are some questions with this offensive line.
McGovern is not a bum.
I shouldn't say he's a bum. He's a jag. He's a jag.
That's fair.
I think he's a jag. He's not a bum. That's true. We've had Spencer Long snap for this team. We've had, I don't even want Jonathan Harrison. So you're right. He's not a bum, but he's a jag. But I still think this rushing offense will be effective. I just think that Sauce Gardner, to me, displays that ceiling where I think by the end of his rookie year, hopefully, the way I see things playing out, you can say, yeah, this guy is going to be one of the top corners in the league in a year. I think you feel the way about Sauce Gardner the way you feel about Elijah Moore right now, if you don't already. His traits are too unique and too rare, and his production's been too great. And I feel I buy into his mindset. There's too much there for me to not really be excited about Sauce Gardner's potential in this defense, especially the type of defense that they play and the way that they man up on third down. And I think that the style where they play, where it's like they might give up some yards, like you said, Sauce Gardner might have some games where it's like, he gives up a big touchdown to Jamar Chase, or he has a tough schedule ahead of him. But this defense is built to win on third down, get sacks, create turnovers. And I think Sauce Gardner will be the beneficiary of that with maybe a few interceptions of his own. He didn't have too many in training camp. I don't think he was the main ball hawk out there, but I think certainly has that potential. But he didn't get thrown at all in preseason, so maybe not. But either way, I think Sauce is, by the end of the year, you're going to be pretty comfortable saying that he's their best rookie. So I'll go with him on that. But I wouldn't be surprised if Hall has more production. All right, biggest surprise on the team. I'm trying to think of an example from last year. Who would be the biggest off the top of
maybe Barrios, I guess.
Probably Barrios. That's a good pick. I think Barrios, especially with the production in December. I was going to say maybe Quincy Williams in terms of like just claimed off waiver wire to starting linebacker and made some plays, but I know he didn't. Well, I'm not saying that he. From where he was claimed to being the starter this year, that's a pretty big surprise. You can't completely discount him, but I think Barrios is probably the pick there. But who do you think it'll be for this year?
I'm running through the roster right now, trying to think of someone. Because if they're a surprise, I guess it would catch me by surprise right now, just thinking about it. So it wouldn't be that surprising if I came up with it immediately. I'm just trying to stall right now.
I got it. You
Do
want
you
to
have
stall for
one?
you?
Do you have one?
No, not at all. No, I'm just kidding. Kind of like you in the sense that we wrote these down and then we
Actually, you know what? I have a
thought.
good one. I have a good one.
Okay, go ahead.
This is a guy who I probably wouldn't pick prior to the preseason, but I thought his preseason play was pretty good, and now puts him on the map to be a surprise player. How about Jamie Sherwood?
Interesting pick. Now, what type of season do you see him having? Do you see him overtaking, like, do you see a Mosley, Quan, Quincy injury going on, and then Sherwood has to get more reps, or do you think Sherwood just
Yeah,
proves
I
himself
mean, I
on?
mean, I think I feel like there's a path to a starting spot there for him. Obviously, Mosley's locked in there, but after that, I think Quincy has had a shaky career, shaky season last year, not the best preseason. Quan is, I would like to see him playing next to Mosley right now. Still a good player, but they didn't pay him a lot of money, so there's not a ton of investment there. So I think Sherwood can impress. Injuries happen, bad play happens. He does have a path to get up there. So I think he's going to get his special team snaps. He is going to get some occasional snaps defensively if he can make the most of those. Maybe he finds his way into the starting lineup by the end of the year and plays pretty well. So I think he is a pretty decent pick for this.
I can't tell if this is a pro. I still think you label this one as a surprise. After the preseason and training camp hype he has, it's not maybe as big of a surprise. But I'm gonna say Michael Clemens because I think that he's gonna have a great year. I think he's gonna have a better year than Jermaine Johnson, which it maybe isn't
Okay.
that bold after the training camp that we saw. But I think Clemens is getting meaningful snaps in the regular season throughout the year. I think he's just too much of a freak and plays with too much energy and size and speed and talent. And he was winning too much in the preseason not to throw him out there. And I know he was going up against backups, but I still think that he maintains a high level of production. I'm not saying he's going to be, I almost said OCU Manura. I think that was just because he wore 72 or Michael Bennett. I'm not saying he's going to be, a TJ Watt level player year one, or even that'll even hit that ceiling, but the Jets essentially have 8 defensive line starters. And I think Clemens is an integral part of that, being able to play inside at 3 tech, being able to play defensive end. You can play him on first downs against the run. You can put him in on third downs. I just think he's a guy that the Jets will utilize. And I think he's less, maybe it's hard to just say this off one preseason, but I think he might be less of a developmental player than Jermaine Johnson because he's older. That might be just he's 25. Maybe he should be more developed than Jermaine Johnson. I think Johnson should ultimately develop into hopefully the better player. But right now, I think Clemens outplays him and is a damn good year, which would be a surprise at the beginning of training camp. Maybe not as big of a surprise now, but I don't know. I'm thinking like a 7-sack season for him. Like that's like, that would be a
Really?
surprise.
Wow.
Yeah. I kind of feel like a big,
Okay.
maybe that's a lot. 6 sacks. I mean, I don't want to get too ahead.
We're talking surprise here, so
all right.
it's okay.
I see it. Maybe 7's a little high. Maybe 5, 6. I just see a good season for Michael Clemens ahead of him. I think this is not a guy who's just going to shine in the preseason and not play at all. He might not play as much at the beginning of the year, but I think by the end, 17 games, he can get 6 sacks. I'll put it at 6 right now. I don't want to be too egregious here, especially since like how many.
Throw in one more. Sorry to cut you off, but Tony Adams, I think you got to put him in there.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. What was I was about to say, because 7 sounded egregious, but didn't like Jordan Jenkins have like, I know he played pretty much every snap, but like I'm looking it up real quick. Didn't Jordan Jenkins have like a season where he had 7 sacks in 18 and 8 sacks in 19. So it's not like absurd for Clemens to have.
That's at the age Clemens is right now too. So
yeah, that's true. And this defense fits his strengths perfectly. I don't know. Go back and watch a Giants game. Him running down those quarterbacks was terrifying. I mean, it was like that all preseason, but
he is a guy who I could see getting good stats because of his ability to chase down plays like that.
Yeah.
Like you don't see a lot of guys his size who just look at that Tyrod play, the way he just doesn't stop going full speed, the way he's chasing it down. Most guys, will chase him just to get, the pressure, and then they kind of trail off. But this guy doesn't stop. He's going to get some sacks and some forced fumbles and quarterback hits playing that way.
Yeah, I'm buying into the regular season translation for him, and that length that he has, like that's just
Yeah.
I really love how the Jets prioritize length, because I really do think that leads to a lot of big plays, whether it's like batting balls at the line of scrimmage, forcing fumbles with your long arms, or even just creating separation between you and the offensive tackle. And that a lot of times that leads to, tackles for losses and sacks. So
Right.
I really think that he's going to have a big year, and a guy that we're going to be super excited about by the end of it. All right, biggest letdown. There's a few in my head that we could go with here, but I'm curious to see who you go. I think I know who you're going to say, because you've been saying it since March. So you might not jump off the bandwagon yet. Is it CJ Uzama? That's the guy that it seems like to me that you're not as high on as maybe other people are. And maybe after
I
the
guess so.
right.
I just feel like maybe at this point, like fans have kind of accepted and seen that,
I don't know about that.
Conklin. Are there a lot of fans out there
Well,
who
I'm
still
not.
think Uzama's number one?
No, no, no,
I
no.
feel like it's become clear, like
No,
Conklin
no, no.
is
I'm not.
overtaken.
Well, that's for sure, but that wouldn't be a letdown if Conklin's number one and Uzama's still, getting his opportunities as a blocker, as a yak guy, scoring touchdowns. Like Jets are going to play two tight end sets. I'm saying, do you think he's going to underperform in that role, especially for the money that they're paying him?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a given. His blocking has to be good. I think that's really what's going to determine this, because I don't think the numbers are going to be there. He's probably going to keep putting up what he has, which is 400 500 yards, maybe 3 to 4 touchdowns, which is okay, but it's not close to what you would expect for that contract. But if he can block really well in addition to that, then I think you could see it. So I think that is what it's going to come down to. But I do have another one here that I've kind of thought,
Okay.
actually two free agents, and I'm not predicting that they're going to be
Oh,
let down. Wait, are we predicting they're going to be let downs, or am I just bringing up
yeah.
options?
It's kind of a prediction, but I'd like to hear all the options, because it's not like the prediction
Okay,
means
so I
shit.
guess
So
this doesn't, all right, I guess it is a prediction, but it doesn't mean I'm wishing for it to happen, obviously.
hopefully,
Um,
hopefully
okay.
not.
All right, so I'm gonna go with, I don't know if I want to say it.
Oh, Jesus Christ, just get
This
it out. What?
this one's less about logic and more just about gut. DJ Reed, just because the lingering issue with the
Well, that's a bit of a
hamstring
waffle.
throughout the offseason, it just feels like the kind of thing that precedes a season that has a lot of injuries and just never really materializes the way you want it to. And there is also the question of breakout season last year. Will he maintain it? Those are the question marks. But I do think he'll stay healthy and have a good season. But there are some
Hedging your
for
bet there.
yeah, I'm
I get
definitely
it, because
hedging.
you've been very high on DJ Reed since they signed him.
Yeah, for
The
sure.
point to the point where I think at the beginning of training camp, he was the guy to say he's going to have the best season of the free agents. But I get what you mean, where it's like when a guy battles a hamstring all training camp, how many times does he come into the year and just dominate? Like it happens, I guess. Sorry, it happens, I guess. But it's just like I don't know, like how healthy is that hamstring if it's still bothering him after a month? And also, it's very classic Jets for them to be like after the first. I think he was injured for one day. It's like, oh, this is minor. He'll be back in a few days, and it's like here we are a month later. He did come back for a little bit. And I guess he aggravated it, and we'll see if he plays week one. But I think that's a letdown has to be a letdown, and that
Yeah,
would be
I
one.
think
So
I think that's what I was just gonna say. Is like for it to be a letdown, like there has to be expectations there, and
right.
for him there are expectations. I have high expectations because I think he's a really good cover corner and a good run defending corner. So I'm very excited to watch him play when he's healthy. But just reading the signs, there are some warning flags there.
I'm really struggling with who to go with for this one. I mean, we've laid out Uzama. I think Reed is a smart pick. I'm trying to think if there's anybody. I mean, like the answer that you could go with here, and I'm not again like you said, it would be like Zach. But I think my expectations might be. We're gonna get to him in a second, I guess. Do we? Yeah, he's in there in terms of our expectations for his season. I don't know if, but I don't think he's gonna be a letdown by the end of the year though. I just feel like maybe his stats won't be like. I don't think he's gonna have that like Josh Allen otherworldly leap, who by the way didn't really take it till year 3 anyway. But like I still think that league wide Zach Wilson will still be. I think people will be more confident about him and people will be high on him, but it won't be like a sure thing. Zach Wilson is Jets franchise quarterback going into year 3. I think it'll be going into year 3. Okay, he had a much better second year, similar to how like I think he'll be better than Darnold in 2019, but you could see that Darnold did get better from 2018 overall. And going into year 3, I think you were high on Darnold, but it was still like, he has to prove it this year. And I think it'll be something similar, although I do think he'll play better than Darnold. Do you agree with that? Do you think, like, is that a letdown? Is it a letdown if he has like 23 touchdowns. And, I don't want to just start arbitrarily picking stats, but you know what I mean? The type of season where it's like, all right, he played well, but he didn't have like, an amazing season. Like, how do you feel about that? Is that fair?
I mean, definitely when it's all said and done, we're going to have to evaluate it beyond the stats because, there are always lies within the stats. But I do think what separates Zach this year from Darnold in his second year is the fact that the supporting cast is a lot better. So with Darnold, you understood there would be statistical limitations because of the O-line, because of the receivers, the run game, the coaching, all that stuff. But with Zach, this is a situation where you would think that it would more so trend the other way in terms of the supporting cast should be helping his numbers, with the completions that should be generated for him on these rollouts, on these, on these plays where, he should be able to get more production because of what's around him rather than less, or at worst, just be in the middle where it's not really hurting him or helping him. So that's what I would think would happen, but it's not necessarily guaranteed to play out that way. So we'll have to, circle back at the end of the season and see do the numbers match up with what his film shows. But
and I predicted him to win 9 games. So if they win 9 games, it's going to be pretty hard for Zach Wilson to have a letdown.
Most likely, yeah.
So and I don't want to just start randomly throwing other just stuff like, oh, this guy could suck. I guess the last thing I would put would be a unit, and that'd be the offensive line. I think the offensive line has the potential to maybe be a bit of a letdown. I don't think they're going to be bad, but I think when Becton was healthy and they brought in Laken Tomlinson and Fant was playing left tackle, there was a swell where it was like they could push into the top 10 this year. They have a legitimately very good offensive line when you look around the league. I still think that could be the case. I still think the Jets, they might be even better with Dwayne Brown. Who knows? But I think there's more variables there than I think we're kind of counting the offensive line as good already, where it's like, we don't know how IVT will develop, especially at right guard. We don't know how George Fant will be a right tackle. Who knows which Connor McGovern we're getting on every snap. Laken Tomlinson is good, but he's had a good few years in San Francisco, but it's not like he's lit the world on fire every single year he's been in the league. And Dwayne Brown is pushing 40. So, there are question marks on that unit. I still think they'll have a good year, but it's a one to keep an eye on for. I think in terms of letdown, I'll pick Uzama. It seems like, I don't know who you're picking there exactly, but those are some options, I guess.
I guess Reed would be my pick.
All right. Upset win. This is biggest win at the upset. So last year, when the season concluded, it would probably be the Bengals. But looking at the schedule, it would have been the Titans, probably. 1 seed, beating the Titans. I did not think the Jets were going to win that game. So that would have been the biggest upset. They have an upset.
They were a little banged up. The Bengals were healthier. So
in retrospect, the Bengals is the bigger win. But on the outside of the season, it would have been the Titans looking at that schedule as the game. You'd have been like, oh, they're not going to win that one. Like, I predicted that as a loss the week of the game, which, you get me talking about this team on a podcast. It's hard for me not to be like, I think they could win. But that one, I was like, I don't think they'll win. And then they won. So what's the big, could it be this weekend, Michael? Could it be the Ravens?
Actually, I got a good one.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with week 6 at Green Bay. I think there's a better shot. I think they have a better shot in this game than a lot of people realize. There are some matchups they can win. You look at Green Bay's receivers, not the best receiver group. And if this secondary's as advertised, if DJ Reed is not the letdown, like I just predicted, if that cornerback group is what it can be against those Packers receivers, it's a matchup they can win right there. Maybe keep that offense in check on the road, which is always key. And then the Packers run defense last year was not too great. So that is also something that the Jets can exploit. So those two things, I think, level the playing field a little bit.
Not to mention, I thought you might throw this in there as well, because I thought about Green Bay. I think it's a great pick. They're coming off of a game in London with no bye the week before. They're playing the Giants, so maybe they just walk through the Giants and it's not a big deal. But the time travel and they're at home, so it's a little different than having to go back to back on the road. But some teams get jet lagged. The one thing I will say about that game that I don't think the Jets. The reason it's hard for me to pick that is Matt LaFleur, who is Robert Saleh's one of his best friends. The game that Saleh missed with COVID, he literally was watching the game on Zoom with Matt LaFleur, the Jets-Jags game together, who's Mike LaFleur's brother, the offensive coordinator. It's hard for me to imagine that when the Jets were struggling last year, even this offseason, like that Mike LaFleur or Robert Saleh hasn't kind of talked about the Jets with Matt LaFleur and got in his input on Zach and on this offense and what they're trying to do. And obviously LaFleur has a great understanding of this team and what Robert Saleh wants to do and what Mike LaFleur wants to do. I mean, it's his best friend and his brother. And the Packers on paper are a more proven team. It's possible the Jets, like you said, it's like there are weaknesses on that Green Bay squad, but it's like with the amount of knowledge that Matt LaFleur has on this team, I think it benefits him far more than the amount of knowledge that Saleh and Mike LaFleur might have on Matt LaFleur. I know it works both ways. It just kind of feels like it's more likely that LaFleur has been more helpful to the Jets than Saleh or Mike LaFleur has been helpful to him. I mean, do you think that's something to read into? Like the amount of, times that maybe they've consulted with Matt LaFleur, the knowledge that he has on Zach and the schemes?
I mean, a little bit, I guess so.
Like a little bit. At least,
yeah.
They watched the game together on Zoom. I mean, like that's, I don't know. They're basically watching film together, and you don't think Saleh's explaining like, oh, on that play they're trying to. I don't know. They've known each other.
The point you made though about London though, I forgot about that. You brought that up to me a few weeks ago. That's a great point. That just adds to what I'm saying. So I think Packers is definitely maybe the surprise win in here.
Yeah, I'm tempted to say the Ravens. We'll go to that game more on Friday. I'll have a better feeling. I'm tempted to say the Ravens because I do think the Jets have a good game here on Sunday. But my answer is going to be the Bengals week 3. I think they beat them twice. I think they beat them 2 years in a row. I think Zach will be back. It'll be Zach's home debut. I think they'll be 1-1 going to that game, and it's a big game for the team. Do you go 1-2 or do you go 2-1? And not to say that's like for certain. They could be 0-2 or they could be 2-0. But I just feel like that week 3 is a big week in my eyes. Like it really does. The difference between doing 0-3 and 1-2 or 2-1, or it's like it really does shift the narrative of the season by week 3. And I just feel like the Jets and Bengals match up extremely well together. This is a more talented Jets team. The Bengals certainly struggled with the Jets last year. I feel like the losing team in the Super Bowl always has a bit of a hangover, especially at the start of the season. So I'll say the Bengals. I think the Jets beat the Bengals week 3. I like that. You feel good about that one?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great pick. This is definitely a game that I think for the most part people are expecting the Jets to. I wouldn't say for the most part expecting them to lose, but it's definitely a tough game. So, and especially with the Bengals having lost to the Jets last year, maybe you feel like they'll balance it out. So yeah, I think that's a good pick.
All right. Last one of the superlatives, and then we have some over-unders, and we'll speed it up to get out of here. Well, I said that a few weeks ago, and then somebody commented like, why are we rushing through this here? I mean, so I guess I don't have to speed it up that fast. But last one of the superlatives was practice squad MVP, which is probably the least important of all the superlatives. But like I said, like with the new rules, like these guys will play. I mean, this is the depth of your roster. You can put veterans on this part of the team. Who are you thinking for practice squad MVP? Who's the guy that comes up and fulfills a meaningful role?
I'm gonna go with my man Tanzel Smart.
Really?
I could definitely see him, whether it's injuries or just poor performance, see him coming up and finding a niche in the run game.
Yeah, I think that is a good pick in the sense that like that Solomon Thomas, Sheldon Rankins, Nathan Shepard trio like really might leave a lot to be desired.
Yeah.
And it could be like, let's give Marshall or Smart a shot on this roster. That's a good pick. I was leaning towards going with Will Parks because I think he's the best player or the most proven player on this roster. He played well at the end of last year. He's really bought into Robert Saleh. You can tell from the way he tweets about this team and what we're building here. For the reasons I mentioned earlier, where I do think the plan with Parks is that if there's an injury, he's the guy you bring up, and I think he gets snaps over Davis. Obviously, it seems like Adams is safety number 3, but I could see Parks if there's an injury to Joyner, Whitehead, both of whom who have injury struggles. I think Parks ends up playing, and I think he plays at a high level. So that's my practice squad MVP. But I think Smart is a great pick, or Marshall as well. All right, here's some over-unders. That's it for the superlatives. Some interesting stuff there. Over-under, Carl Lawson, 8.5 sacks. What are you going with?
I'm going to go under. I'm going to say eight flat. I'm going to say 8 flat.
8 flat. Now, I should know this off the top of my head, but Carl Lawson, what's the most sacks he's had in the season before?
I think that was the most. I think his second year, he had 8.
He had 8. He had exactly 8.5 his rookie year, 2017, unless he was drafted and missed.
Oh, there you go.
2017.
Yeah, rookie year 8.5.
And then he's had 5.5 in some other years. I guess you're right. He's been more of a
I mean, I don't know. The ceiling is high because of the talent that's around him, but he for whatever reason, he just hasn't proven yet that he's a big sack guy.
Finisher.
So
Yeah.
right, and which I guess there is some evidence to that. His arm length is pretty short, so maybe it's just something that is part of his game. But I think 8 is a good number. If 8 comes with very high pressure and hit totals, that's still a great season.
Yeah, I think I was talking about Quinn Williams setting up other guys in this defensive line. Carl's is a guy who definitely does that with the pressure. He forces quarterbacks to step up or move away from him, and that leads oftentimes to sacks. So I guess it's hard for me to be on the Monday before week 1 to not be like over. I think I do think Carl gets over on this though. I'm going to try to temper my expectations on a lot of these, but I think Carl Lawson hits 9 sacks. I think Carl Lawson hits 10 sacks, but I don't know. I think the comeback year, him coming back off that Achilles after the training camp he was having, I think he's extra motivated. It's the perfect system for him. I like that he's going to be fresh, that they're not going to overplay him. They have the depth for him to come and be, go full blast on those big third downs. And he's certainly going to have a lot of pressures. I'll say over on that. All right, Quinnen Williams over under 7.5 sacks. Who I don't think what was the most sacks Quinnen's had?
Again, I think 7 in
should have done research. Quinnen Williams stats. Yeah, it didn't give me the. Hold on.
Yep, 7 in 2020.
Nice. Okay, 7 in 2020. So do you think he passes?
And that was in 13 games also.
Again, kind of hard not to say over. What are you thinking?
I'm going to go over here. I think he's going to match Lawson with 8. I could see him getting 9. I think he's going to have a good season. I'm going to go over here.
I think he's a great season as well. I don't know if I think he hits over on that. But again, like Carl, it's like he could still have a great season and not hit over that amount. But I think both those guys have great years. I'm going to try not to be optimistic on all of these though, but it'll be hard. All right, most sacks by anyone who is not Lawson, Williams, or JFM. So you got Clemens, Jermaine Johnson, Jacob Martin, Bryce Huff, Sheldon Rankins.
Well, who was the answer to this last year? Was it Rankins?
You want to look that one up?
I'm going to look it up.
Okay, you're a little faster
more
with the
rhetorical.
stats.
It was Rankins. He had 3.
Oh,
which is pretty bad. Hopefully we're above that this year.
I think they should be. I think this defensive line is much improved, obviously, but I think the production is going to be a lot higher.
I'm going to go with Martin. He's been a pretty consistent, like 3.5. Maybe he's a little bit low. He had 4 last year.
I don't think it's Martin.
That's in a bigger role than he'll play this year.
Not Lawson Williams, JFM. Well, based off my prediction, that would be Michael Clemens, so I'll stick by it. I'm going to say Clemens gets the most sacks. I think Clemens has more sacks than Johnson. I think Huff and Martin have about the same, where they're getting around 4 sacks. Huff might have 3 sacks. I think they're going to be under 5, low. I mean, you have to think about how many sacks can there be to go around. I think the Jets will have a lot of sacks this year and be. When you look at this is another one, we can do it right now. I guess team sack ranking, you put at 8.5. It's like, I think they'll be above that. I think they're going to be top 5 in sacks this year. I think this defensive line is going to feast. I'm not. They might lose some games, but they're going to get their sacks. So, I'll say Clemens.
Solomon Thomas had 3.5 last year. There are a lot of guys in the mix here. Yeah. I'm kind of thinking about Johnson just because I feel like even if Clemens might have the better season, I think Johnson really can be a big hustle sack kind of guy just with his speed. And his length, I think he can clean up a lot of sacks. So I could see it being him. And I think he'll get the playing time to get some sacks too. I'm going to go with Johnson. But all these guys are going to be really close after that top 3, I think.
Clemens? You think Johnson outperforms Clemens?
In terms of sacks? Yeah, I think so.
I'm going. I mean, I guess that should be the conventional wisdom considering he's a first round pick, but I don't know. I think he's more raw than Clemens is.
Yeah, this is a really hard one. Yeah,
it's close. All right. Zach Wilson over under 25.5 passing touchdowns, which based off last year is a little high, but I guess 25.5. It's like, does he have a great year or does he have a good year? Or I mean, you could go under and he could have a poor year, but 25.5, a little high for our guy. I'm gonna say under on this one. I think he's right around 23. If you go total touchdowns, I think he might be over because I think he's gonna get some rushing ones, even on the knee. I think he's around 22, 21, 23 touchdown passes. How about you?
Yeah, I agree. I think like 23, 24 is where he goes. I just pulled up the leaderboard right now. So last year, if you had 25.5, that would be in between 10th and 11th. 10th was 27, 11th was 25. So yeah, I think probably that, 23, 24 range, 12th, 13th in the league, somewhere around there. This is if he plays, say 16 games.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. He's missing a game. Yeah, it'll be low 20s, I think. It might, yeah. Elijah Moore, 7.5 touchdowns. Over under.
I'm gonna
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. You go ahead.
Okay. I was gonna say the type of season Elijah Moore, I think will have lends me to want to say over. But if we're gonna only say Zach Wilson gets 22 touchdown passes, 23 touchdown passes, do you think he's gonna get basically a third of his touchdowns? Plus whatever Flacco does week 1, assuming he starts. I don't know. It's tough. I want to give him the over, but
yeah, the touchdown is a little harder for him than if we put yards or something, because I think he'll go well over 1,000 pretty easily. Maybe catch like 70, 80 passes.
I'm gonna go under.
Touchdowns is a little tougher, especially if we're not, like you said, not going to be optimistic about the passing touchdown. So yeah, I'll go under. I think 6 or 7, but I could see him getting 8 or 9.
Yeah, I think right around 7 is because like especially like bubble screens, and I think he'll break one. He might have a few deep, but it's like once you get into the red zone, well, but then again, you have those little option routes, those little routes to the flats, those quick outs. I shouldn't say that he's not a red zone threat, because with his route running, he's always a threat. So I'll go under though, but I think his yards will be pretty high. All right, Tyler Conklin over under 700 receiving yards.
Well, this is pretty ambitious for him because it's well beyond his career high last year, and he's competing with Uzama.
But that's a little high. We should have set that lower, because how many yards do we think Zach's?
How about 6? Yeah, that's true. Last year Conklin had 593. So should we maybe say 600?
Well, I can see why you did 700. I didn't know he had 593 last year. Well, that seems pretty high. I guess 700 is not out of. If he did 593 last year in Minnesota, this year in this system, I guess Kirk Cousins throws more touchdowns or more yards. I don't know.
I think he'll be maybe like 650 is about where I think he'll be.
Yeah, 600 is kind of what I'm seeing for him. So I guess under 700, but over 600 is where we fall.
Yeah.
All right, Garrett Wilson over under 600 yards. Receiving yards is, I'll let you go first on this one.
Yeah, this is where it gets tough, because like I did a receiving yardage prediction breakdown a few weeks ago, and as you go through it and you start putting all these numbers together, you're like, someone has to take a cut here for this to be realistic. And I think Garrett Wilson might be that guy this year. I think he's going to be good long term, but this year with Elijah Moore, Corey Davis, Conklin, who we're optimistic about, I think Wilson might take a little bit of a back seat in terms of the stats this year. So I'm going to go under. I think it'll be in the 500s somewhere, and then it'll be in the future when the breakout comes.
I'm trying to remember how many games Elijah Moore played last year. But he had 538 last year. What was he playing? 13
11
games?
Right?
11 games? I'm thinking 1, 2, 3. I'm not going to count it on the pod. Yeah, 11. So 538 and 11 games. So I think he does a little bit less than that, because there's more mouths to feed on offense. And then it's like you hope he plays more games than that, but you never know. It's never certain. I could see Garrett Wilson missing some time with that frame. He does need to add some more muscle. So, but either way, I'm going under on that. I don't know exactly where he falls, but I think you're right. There's too many mouths to feed for him to get over 600 yards, or at least for us to predict he gets over 600 yards. If he does, if he replaces, like I said, like if he's like Michael Carter last year, where he replaces Davis pretty early in the season and he's getting a lot more reps, then I could definitely see him getting over. But right now, I'll say under. How about this though? More touchdowns, Garrett Wilson or Braxton Berrios, and we'll just assume just on offense, because Berrios special teams, I feel like. Well, what do you think should we include Berrios' return game?
No. Let's just look at offense.
Okay. More touchdowns, him or Wilson.
This is a hard one, because both these guys are kind of good red zone weapons. Like with Berrios, we saw last year, they get him some manufactured touches near the goal line. And then Wilson is one of your best jump ball guys. So I think he will get some fade routes in the red zone.
And some deep balls.
And some deep balls as well, which, lends to touchdown scoring.
But Berrios gets the end arounds, which don't count as passing touchdowns.
Right.
Wilson will get some.
We'll count the rushes in
Yeah,
here.
Wilson will get some end rounds as well too. I mean, if you haven't seen the game
Yeah,
he had
for
against
sure.
Purdue, I mean, like he had end around touchdown there. You know, he has the yak ability, or I mean, rack ability, I guess. Or
I'm
he
gonna go
can.
Barrios. I'm gonna go
I'm going.
Barrios.
Well, I was going to go Barrios as well, and it's just because he's the jet sweep guy. And Garrett
Right.
Wilson, Elijah Moore will get those opportunities as well. But Barrios is their starting slot. I think he's when you want to go to those bubble screens. I just think in the goal line, he'll have a lot of opportunities out there because I think they're going to want him out there for those jet sweep opportunities. Even if they're not going to give it to him, they could use the misdirection. Like Robbie Sabos had a great point about this, where it's like, you know, a lot of teams try to use the jet sweep, but it really only works if you have a legitimate threat there. And the Jets do in Barrios. You know, he is a legitimate guy that if they give the little touch pass to or a little flip to, like he could go 50 yards for a touchdown. So if you're on the 3-yard line and he comes in motion, a linebacker does have to follow him, and a defense does have to think about him getting it. So I think that opens up, you know, you draw the defense left with Barrios moving right to left, and then you throw back right to whoever. And then with that said, he's going to have to get some of those opportunities. So I think Barrios clears Wilson here by quite a few touchdowns. Hall/Carter, 2,000 plus total yards.
Yeah, I think this is. So I was looking at it earlier, and this number isn't as crazy as it seems because just last year, Carter and Ty Johnson combined for almost 1,600. So I think this duo should be able to clear it pretty easily. I mean, you're talking about 1,000 a piece, you know, for two running backs who are going to run the ball and catch the ball. So I'm going to go over. But I'm not sure by how much. I think they'll be over that, though.
Yeah, I'm taking the over on that as well. Sauce Gardner over under 3.5 interceptions. It's a tough one.
I'm going to go under. Yeah. I think he'll get 2, probably 2, maybe 3. I don't think he's going to be a high interception guy this year.
I don't think. Yeah. Well, here the thing with that, and I think it was you that it had to have been you that made this point to me, where it's like, you know, it's possible that this could be a year where he gets targeted the most because he's a rookie, and teams are going to try to pick on him and test him. And then if he plays well, then he's going to get targeted less and less. I do think he will end up being a high interception guy, but if teams stay away from him, and granted it was a small sample size in the preseason, but you know, it wasn't like he had interceptions at Cincinnati for sure, but he's not. I don't think he's ever going to be Trayvon Diggs. 4 interceptions is a little high, but you know, like Marcus Williams in 2015 didn't even like 6 interceptions. Like it's certainly plausible, and this defense is, I think, will create a lot of turnovers. And it's like, so who's going to be getting those interceptions? I'm close. It's like I think he's going to be right at 3 or 4. And I want to give him the 4 because I really could see it, but I'll try to temper my expectations here. I've been very optimistic, so I'll say with he goes 3. I'll take the under on that. But I could definitely see him clearing that.
Yeah, and that was me who did bring that up when we were talking about it. You know, the fact that this, as a rookie, this will probably be the most targeted season of his career, which will give him more opportunities to get those interceptions. So maybe it is the best interception season of his career, or one of the best. But at the same time, I think even though he'll be targeted more, there will be more adjustment to NFL passes, NFL receivers, and making those plays on the ball. So maybe in the future, he does get more interceptions, even if he's targeted less. You know, he picks off a higher percentage of the targets that he gets. So
but it's also like, sorry.
Yeah, you can go.
Well, I was gonna say, but it's also like if he's a guy who we feel like will get burned a few times, quarterbacks, like you said, will be more likely to test him. And I do see him coming up with a lot of those picks. Like the more comfortable quarterbacks get with him, the more picks he's gonna get. I kind of want to go over here, but I'll stick with the under. But it's close. It is close.
And I don't know if he'll ever be a super high interception guy, because even in college, you know, it was 3 per year, which is great. If he can do that in the NFL, that's fantastic. Yeah. But, you know, it was 3 per year at Cincinnati. So to project him to do more in the NFL, you have to see it first. And that's not to say he can't be an amazing player, because you don't have to get picks to be great. Darrelle Revis wasn't a huge interception guy as his career developed. Obviously, he had, you know, early on, he had the 5 and the 6. Then after that, it was, I'm looking at it right now. He had 0 in 2010, 4 in 2011. So rookie year, he had 3. So he wasn't, you know, an enormous interception guy. Most of being a great corner is about what you allow, more so than the takeaways. And in that area, I think Gardner can be the best corner in the league. So I don't know if he's ever going to be an enormous interception guy, but I think he can be a very good one with like 3 to 4, maybe 5 per year.
With his length, though, I think he will be more of a threat in the ball than Revis. Because Revis was one of those guys where, like, if you press him at the line, like he's going to be sticking to that receiver like glue the entire rep. And I think Sauce Gardner hopefully gets to the point where he's like that. But I think early on in his career, we've seen him get a little grabby. He is more like Cromartie in the sense that because he has tremendous size and athleticism and speed, he has that great makeup ability. I think we saw this. It was a rep that got like where like Pitts beat him off the line and seemingly had a wide open touchdown. It was a bad throw, and Pitts may have still come down with the touchdown. But in the last 5 yards of that, like, Sauce covered so much distance and was right there to make a play on the ball and either knock it down or make a, like, I think he will have more opportunities than Revis because he's more of a guy that will rely on that makeup speed, where he might be a guy where quarterbacks think the receiver could be open and then he comes in with his length and he jumps a ball or something like that. I don't know. All right. Offensive line ranking over under 12.5. That's a pretty good over like spot for them, but I'll take the, is it the under or the, if I'm going to say they're going to be a top 10,
I guess under is worse.
Okay.
Over is better.
Well, no, under would be under's better.
Well, under would be a lower number, but like we're saying under, like if you're looking at it, from top to bottom, under would be
right. Okay.
the
Like
worst
if you
ranking,
put it in an Excel doc, like what's top or okay, I'll go above that. So over, but it's close.
Just say better or worse. That's easier.
Okay, that's fine. Better or worse than 12.5. I'll say better, but barely. I mean, like I think they'll be top 15, but if I'm going to predict 9 wins, I might as well just go down the line. And I think that if they're going to win 9 games, they have to be like around a 12 or an 11.
This one's really hard because I want to say maybe a little bit worse, and they'll be around league average just because of all the question marks you mentioned, But at the same time, when you look at it, there's so much investment in here. There's so much talent. Like it feels like, how many offensive lines in the league do you look at and see this much investment into it? Just the money,
like the Eagles,
and the Pro Bowls and the draft allocation,
right?
With Vera Tucker, so it feels like it legitimately can be top 10. But at the same time, there are a lot of questions. So I'm gonna say worse, but not by much. Maybe they'll be like somewhere from 13th to 15th, so slightly above average.
All right. Last one, team sack ranking, which again, team sack ranking 8.5. I think this is the last one, right? Yeah. I'll say above. So maybe I said I wasn't gonna be too optimistic and I closed it to above, but I really do buy into the fact I think Jets are gonna be top 5 in sacks this year. So that one.
Yeah, I agree. I think they'll be top 5 in sacks.
What about over under 3.5? Do you think they get crack top 3? As we get to like random here where it's hard to see, like, but how to make a prediction? Do you think they get top 3?
I'll say worse. I think they'll be like 5 or 6.
I say they're above that. Well, part of the reason too. Well, now
there are just so many good D lines out there.
Too many good D lines. You're right.
Really good blitzing teams who just create the sacks.
Well, also, and I mean, I think the Jets will win 9 games, but I think they'll have some games where it's like teams are just going to want to run the football against them. Because I think that's the weakness of this team. And this defensive line is those runs, those draws, the screens and stuff. And so I feel like they might have, and it's like, if a team has a big lead against the Jets or any type of lead, it makes more sense for them to run the ball. So that's another thing where it's like, if you're a team like, I'm trying to think of a good one off the top of my head. They don't have an amazing defensive line, but like the Bills who have an amazing offense and teams are trying to pass to keep up with you, it's just more opportunities for sacks. So I don't feel like the Jets will have as many of those opportunities because I think they'll be in more, I think they're going to have a lot of sacks, but top 3, it's hard for me to predict that, but I think you're right, around 5 or 6. All right, I think that is any other ones off the top of your head while we did this. There's not anymore in the Google Doc we have, but any other last superlatives or over-unders or questions?
I actually had one question that came up earlier. I forgot to ask it, but do you think there is maybe a possibility that week 1, talking about the tight ends here, that the Jets make Rucker inactive and activate Cager?
That's a good question. I mean, we could have talked about that on Friday, but no, because I think who's there. I mean, I shouldn't say that there is a chance, but I think because Cager had played more than Rucker in the offseason, But I think Ruckert gives the block. I mean, because there's no Wesco or Bodden, Ruckert has to be the blocking tight end. And that's big on special teams too, to have like a blocking tight end or fullback out there, where I think Cager can probably play some special teams, but Ruckert is probably the better special teams player as of right now. And he brings you that fullback tight. And it's like, it's bigger investment too. But that is an interesting question.
Yeah,
Like,
I don't know.
Could
It
we
just
see
came up. It
Cager?
just came up for me because Rucker missed a lot of time. Then when he did play, he's kind of playing really late in the game.
Do you think they make Mims inactive? He says he's expecting it, and it makes sense. If he doesn't play special teams,
Yeah, I think so.
which not great publicity, I guess, but it does. He's they're keeping Mims because he's Davis insurance. So Mims's moment will come this season. Somebody will get injured, and he'll have that make or break moment this year, but it won't be week one. I'm trying to think if there's any other questions I wanted to ask you. But one more guy for letdown, and I didn't throw him in here because it's like how much of a letdown could he be? Because he doesn't get talked about that much. But LaMarcus Joyner, guy hasn't played high quality football in a few years, missed all of last year. The Jets are pegging him as their starting free safety. The safety depth there is questionable. I know they like Tony Adams a lot, so I could see Adams supplanting Joyner at some point. It seems like in the preseason, well, more so the practice clips, you got to see Joyner was on the bad end of a few of those plays. So, but he's not a crazy big letdown because it's like, what are people expecting from Marcus Joyner this year? So I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I was thinking about him, but I had the same thought process. Like, I could see that, but I feel like most Jets fans are kind of at the point now where they understand Joyner expectations are pretty low for him. So, but yeah, I can see him struggling and then being supplanted for sure.
All right, last one. Here's the last question. Which opening day starters are not starting by week 18, ignoring injuries? Because there will be guys who aren't starting because of injuries, but like which guys, like Michael Carter wasn't a starter at the beginning of last year, then he was a starter. Who are some of the guys that you think I guess it's easier to do this. Who are some guys who are starters? I guess it works both ways by the end of the year, week 18, that aren't right now. Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall.
Does Michael Carter count as a starter?
The running back?
Breece Hall?
Yeah, he's the starter right now. Yeah, he's on the depth chart. Like, you go look at the Jets' official depth chart and who will walk out there for the first rep against the Ravens. Who's getting replaced by week 18? Because I think Hall will be the starting running back by the end of the year. I also think Carter's going to have a huge role. I just think it makes more sense for Carter to be more of the third down receiving back. They'll do both, but Hall is certainly built better for January football.
Yeah, so I think definitely Hall, Conklin over Uzama.
He's already the starter. So
is he? I thought on the depth chart that Uzama was number one.
Hold on. Let me look at the ESPN one. You keep talking. I got to find there.
Is Barrios considered a starter over Wilson?
Yep. Yeah, he is. He's the starting.
I think we'll go with that one.
You think he's starting? Well, is he starting over Barrios or is he starting over Corey Davis?
I think over Barrios in the slot.
So he's the slot. Okay.
Yeah.
I disagree with that. I think he's starting over Corey Davis in the outside. I think it'll be more Wilson and Barrios week 18. But this is all
okay. I'm a little bit higher on Corey Davis. So I think
I guess that's true. I don't know. I think Barrios, what he brings to this offense is underrated a little bit by you with the jet sweep stuff and the bubble screen and the dynamic he brings with that motion pre-snap is something.
Well, I mean, Garrett Wilson could have scored that touchdown against the Bucks.
That's true. I mean, I guess that's true. Do you think Garrett Wilson as a rookie makes more sense in that role or Davis's role?
Because is there any touchdown that Barrios scored last year that Garrett Wilson couldn't have scored outside of the kick returns?
Probably not in theory. So that's a good point. Except, do you think that Corey Davis at this point in his career should be getting? I mean, how much stock do you put in Davis being like the bigger physical receiver? Because it doesn't seem like this offense that matters as much. Like they're still running the same plays where it's like you run a post, you run a dig, you run to the, you know what I mean? Like Garrett Wilson can do all of that. So it's really between Davis and Barrios because I think by the year Garrett Wilson is starting, and who is he supplanting? I'm predicting more of Davis because I think that Barrios brings more to the table than Davis does. But you're saying that you think Davis brings more than Barrios. I don't know.
I think Barrios will absolutely have a role throughout the entire season. It's just at some point, I think Garrett Wilson's going to earn more playing time, and it's who do you take snaps from? A guy in Corey Davis, who's a legitimate starting receiver, or a guy in Barrios, who's more of a gadget guy and isn't a starting caliber receiver. I don't think so. I don't know. That's just sort of where I lean. But
You
Barrios,
underrate him.
I don't know. Does his contract suggest he's underrated? I don't know.
His contract is that of what he is, which is slot guy, gadget guy, kick returner, punt returner.
Well, if you take off the kick, he got.
So you're saying by week 18, you're putting Garrett Wilson in the slot and all those jet motion stuff.
No, I think Barrios can still, when you need him, he can do that. But for the most part, I think Garrett Wilson is out there.
But isn't it a bit of a? Well, I guess the thing is you don't want to. It can't be too much of a tell when Barrios is out. Like you have to have plays where Barrios is out. The one thing that I did see in the preseason that was interesting is they had a lot of times where Barrios would, and this might give him the edge of Wilson in this position, is they would motion Barrios in closer to the tight end and run the ball. Like, and they're not running behind Barrios, but he would get, in the mix of things. And Barrios is, he's not an amazing blocker or anything, but he hustles on those blocks. He holds his own, I guess. He had one really good play against, I think it was the Giants. They hit a few reps like that. You know what I'm talking about? Where they almost put him at H-back. Which I think
I know you're talking
with Garrett Wilson. I don't know. Okay, I guess we can wrap it up there though. I don't think there's anybody else we should talk on this. We covered a lot of bases here. We will be back on Friday previewing the Ravens game specifically. The plan for the season is I know we've been flaky the last few months. Life has gotten in the way, but we do plan on this season Monday and Friday. That's what we're shooting for every week until the Jets don't win a game in September, and then we'll be just every Monday. But if they're, the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season, we'll have 2 a week, and then we'll see. But Mondays should be the time from here on out. I know this is coming out Tuesday, but Michael, I couldn't be any more excited for this Sunday. I know I wish it was maybe an easier game than the Ravens, but I just am so excited to see real live Jets football, and especially this year. So can't wait to watch the game with you. Can't wait to watch Jets sort of melt down after 2 plays. Like last year, I mean, people were calling for Saleh to be fired already. People were tweeting me. You'll DM me. Actually, you'll be sitting next to me. What am I saying? You'll be telling me instead of DMing me how bad this Jets team is. Like, that's your thing, is you joke about.
You'll get to hear that in person.
Like Breece Hall will have one run that'll go for like 1 yard, and he'll be like, Breece Hall's terrible. He's horrible. We shouldn't have drafted him. Trade up a horrible value. Like, you just start saying going way over the top, and it ruins the experience for me. So I have that to look forward to this Sunday.
It's sarcastic, everyone. Just putting that out there.
Yeah, it is sarcastic. He's just being mean. All right. We'll be back on Friday previewing the game. You can follow us at CYJ Pod on Twitter, Michael at Michael_Nania, myself, Ben W. Blessington. Go to jetsxfactor.com for the best place to go for Jets content. Like, rate, review on iTunes, subscribe on YouTube. That is all. Everybody have a great week. We'll be back on Friday.